and today we're going to talk about how to maximize dry fertilizer efficiency for greater yield and return on investment. And put a little box down there below that, says E squared equals efficiency times economics. So we're going to be talking about maximizing dry fertilizer efficiency from the standpoint of increasing the efficiency of our dry fertilizer, also improving the return on that investment. Whatever we're going to put into that dry fertilizer application. And for this webinar, you can see down there in the bottom right, we're going to be talking about Titan XC and how it can actually help us increase our dry fertilizer efficiency and improve our final return on investment. What we want to talk about is, why would we even want to focus any energy or resources on dry fertilizer efficiency? How is that going to impact our overall production, our bottom line return on investment? Okay, what are the options that we have to enhance our dry fertilizer? Are there any options out there? And again, we're going to be talking about one option in particular today, Titan XC. And then what evidence is there that Titan XC even works? I'm going to show you some data that's very relevant to, again, our theme of efficiency and economics related to Titan XC. And then I'll do a quick summary and answer any questions that you guys may have. I like doing these webinars, but I always want to, talk about some agronomics and basic principles, not necessarily just a commercial for any particular product. We want to, put some science in there. So when we talk about this dry fertilizer application and things that affect it, how we can make it more efficient, how we can get more return on that investment, we've got to understand a little bit about, what things are affecting our nutrient availability or plant uptake. So I picked a little bit of information here. This example on the slide is kind of mainly focused around phosphorus because a lot of our dry fertilizer applications, the base of those applications usually is phosphorus, and it doesn't matter if we're applying MAP or DAP or triple super or MESZ or MES10. Phosphorus is, the bulk of some of those applications. And we also know that phosphorus, creates more challenges. So we have some guys that, are a little bit further south and kind of struggle sometimes with applying that fertilizer in the fall because of the warmer temperatures and things like that. So just a little background here, just to kind of, make you guys a little bit more comfortable with that fall application, because we know that P doesn't really move that much. The only time we're at risk of losing our P fertilizer or nutrients in the soil is usually by physical movement of the soil or erosion or things like that. And then there's some really key factors that also affect, the availability of phosphorus in the soil. One being pH, whether you're above or below 6.5. If you're above 6.5 and you're in a calcareous situation with a lot of calcium, you're probably going to deal with calcium tie-up. If you're on the acidic side below 6.5, you're probably dealing with iron or aluminum tie-up. But that's one of the key factors that affect phosphorus availability. Another one, organic matter levels. And the higher the organic matter, the greater the mineralization potential. And mineralization is just simply converting organic phosphorus in the system, or nitrogen can be organic as well, but it's converting organic nutrients to inorganic sources that the plant can actually use. And then one of the last key factors is that placement of the fertilizer. A lot of us go out in a lot of areas and we've got the spreaders and, with the spinners or the airflow trucks, we just broadcast it. In some areas, it's more of a banded application. And so the placement, whether it's broadcast or banded, makes a difference, as well as, the depth. If we're going to band that, how deep are we putting that? Is it to the side? Is it below the row? All of these things come into play. And unlike nitrogen, our P and K loss is not materially impacted so much by the ambient soil temperatures. There's other factors that come into play with P and K and some of the other nutrients outside of the temperature that cause it to be unavailable or lost to the system. So just a little bit of agronomic background there. And all of that leads to how are we going to solve this problem that we have with nutrient availability. And the table you see in front of you is just a general nutrient efficiency table from several sources on the internet, Western Fertilizer Handbook, International Plant Nutrition Institute. All of these sources combined to come up with this table to show that in general, nutrient efficiency or availability is not that great. There's a lot of room to add technology to help improve the availability of our nutrition. And again, you can see down there, a couple of ways to do that is to improve mineralization of organic nutrients, whether nitrogen or phosphorus, or to improve the release or influence the release of other nutrients. One in particular, potassium. Potassium is, a nutrient that doesn't have to go through a huge conversion process. It's K plus that the plant uses, but it can get locked between the soil layers. You've got that potassium on the exchange sites. If the soil dries out and those layers close up, any of that potassium between those layers is basically rendered unavailable until that profile is hydrated again. So this is the problem we're trying to solve. How do we increase our nutrient availability and nutrient efficiency above and beyond what we're getting with just our fertilizer alone? So a little bit of more context to this problem. And I found this source on the internet. I think it's simple enough to kind of explain how that problem can be, exaggerated in some soils. Basically, the reason we add fertilizer is because most of our soils without additional fertilizer can't support the growth, development, and yield that we're looking for in our crops. We've got to add something to it. It's not saying that, those soils don't have nutrients in them. It's just that those nutrients aren't available in a time frame that the plant can actually utilize those for maximum yield and return on that investment that we put in seed and crop protection and labor and all of these things. And then a lot of our agriculture systems that require additional fertility, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, all of our other secondary and micronutrients, to get the best plant productivity and nutrient recovery during the growing season, that can be very slow. So again, how do we increase our efficiency, uptake, and availability of our dry fertilizer programs? We've got to use some type of technology to do that. We've probably gotten close to tapping out our cultural practices and other things to improve nutrient availability and efficiency. Now we've got to use some additional technology. Okay, a couple more interesting facts. Again, we know we've probably got a lot of guys further south that sometimes wonder, okay, if I make my fertilizer more available and I'm putting it out in the fall, are those nutrients going to be around when it's time for me to plant my crop 6 months from now? And are they going to last throughout that growing season to give me increased yield 9 or 10 months from now? So, I found this that, basically kind of sums it up, that fall is really the best time for P&K applications for a number of reasons. Usually the workload is less, the soils are fairly dry, and again, you guys said that harvest is progressing quite well in most of the areas, and the availability of fertilizers. And then those less mobile nutrients like phosphorus, one of the problems with that dry fertilizer granular application is, you've got to look at the distribution of those prills on the soil. And if you're only putting 150 pounds or so out there, the distribution of those fertilizer prills is not that dense. So you've got to deal with the nutrients being available when that phosphorus really doesn't move that much. And then again, we've got to try to overcome some of the other nutrient tie-ups or loss mechanisms. Again, the example of potassium being locked between the clay layers. So we've got, several things we've got to deal with. As far as, applying fertilizer in the fall in some of our warmer areas, this is my take on it. If you are okay applying fertilizer in general, then I am absolutely okay with you adding Titan XC to that fertilizer. If you have a situation where you are not going to apply fertilizer because you know without a doubt that you're going to have some issues with that, then by all means do the agronomic thing and avoid that application. But if you apply fertilizer in the fall, applying Titan to that is not going to cause you any issues. It's actually going to be a benefit, and we'll show you some of that information. Okay, last thing on the agronomic side, why is it important to break down our fertilizer prills faster, make it more efficient? Again, most of the fertilizer that we apply to the fields is not necessarily in the plant available form when we apply. Let's say phosphorus, it's generally P2O5. Plants only use mono or dihydrogen phosphate, so it has to go through that conversion. Potassium, again, we generally apply KCl or K2O based potassium fertilizer. The plants use K+. So we've got to get that fertilizer broken down so that natural system can convert it or release it in the form that the plant is actually going to use. We've got some tools here. Again, we can use Titan XC to help expedite that conversion or breakdown through the microbial metabolites that's in that product. Basically, what we're doing when we produce the Titan XC product is we are harvesting the metabolites that are naturally produced in a soil by the soil microbes that cause these conversions, whether it's mineralization of organic nutrients, whether it's influencing the conversion of a nutrient by another mechanism, whether it's influencing plant roots to be more efficient at taking up nutrition, whether it's helping improve overall soil health. This is what we're talking about when we say the base active ingredients of Titan XC, these microbial metabolites, help influence what naturally happens in that system to give us greater efficiency, greater uptake, and a greater return on that fertilizer investment. So we're talking about Titan XC. Let's get to the two simple questions. What is it? What does it do? First, again, Titan XC, it's fertilizer biocatalyst applied to dry fertilizer designed to increase nutrient efficiency and provide that consistent yield response. It doesn't matter what the crop is. It doesn't matter what the fertilizer blend is. It works across a wide range of crops, soils, regions of the country, different types of fertilizer blends. It is designed to enhance fertilizer, not a specific fertilizer, or dry fertilizer in general. How does it do that? It's going to help accelerate the breakdown of the fertilizer prill. It's going to help increase the availability of our nutrition that we apply, and also help in that area where that fertilizer is deposited or worked into the system. It's going to actually help mineralize some of those organic nutrients to make our system more efficient. Improve the root development and nutrient absorption. Again, we talk about influences on the plant as well as the uptake of those nutrients. And the mechanism there is, how do you get that root system more active? And one way is to produce more root tips or root hairs, because those root tips or root hairs are the active sites in the plant where those nutrients and water are being taken up. It's a minimal grower investment, and you'll see that as we get to some more of the economics, but the general rule about the cost of Titan XC is about $2.38 per 100 pounds of fertilizer. So we'll go through some more examples of that later. And then last, again, that consistent yield response, return on investment. We'll show you guys some ROI numbers. We'll get into a lot more detail, again, about the efficiency and economics of using Titan XC in this dry fertilizer application. So again, little example of how this product works. Just think about, you want a glass of orange juice. How do you want your juice? Do you want to place that orange on top of your glass and just wait for that juice to, slowly seep out into your glass, kind of like mimicking what happens in nature. If you put that orange out there, you put the fertilizer out there, it just slowly breaks down? Or do you want to accelerate the release of that juice from the orange, put a press on it? That's the example of putting Titan XC on your dry fertilizer, is accelerating the release of those nutrients into the system. Now, the example you see on the right-hand side, that's a 24-hour time lapse of fertilizer on the left side, untreated in water, versus the same amount of fertilizer treated with Titan XC in the same amount of water after 24 hours. Look at the difference in the breakdown of that fertilizer. This is what we're talking about accelerating the breakdown to get those nutrients into the system faster, make them more available, and get more of those nutrients into the crop when the crop needs it. Here's another look at a time-lapse video that was done at one of our locations, where they were saying, okay, we want to prove it. So we're going to plant corn and we're going to plant wheat. We're going to have one tray with fertilizer that's untreated and a tray with the same amount of fertilizer treated. Now you can see in the title of that, there's only 18 prills in each of these trays. These trays are about a foot wide and probably 26 to 28 inches long, but there's only 18 prills with or without Titan XC in this video. And you can see the YouTube link there. You can go, you can watch this video, this time lapse. I'll show you a site, cropfertility.com, where you can actually go and see some other things like this. But this is what we're talking about. Look on the right side there with the wheat. This is the first day of germination. Look at the difference in the germination with the Titan XC versus untreated. And then also go over here to day 3 in the corn, where you've got the Titan. You can see that corn's developing faster. And if you go and watch the time lapse, you can actually see it in real time. I picked these pictures because of some shadows and a couple of other pictures, but you can actually see the difference the Titan XC on the fertilizer makes and how fast this product works in accelerating the nutrient efficiency and availability. So let's get into, again, we talked about some of the proof, what some of the evidence that we have. I've got a couple of trials here from Hopkinsville, Kentucky, the Bruce Research Farm there, and there's a fair amount to unpack in this slide. First, you see that we've got 2 different fertilizer rates. We've got 270 pounds of 920 through 30 versus 300 pounds. The standard rate in that area is 300 pounds of 920 through 30. So what they did here is they pulled out 10%. Now, guys, this is not a commercial to help you reduce your fertilizer rates. This is just an example of showing how we can use technology to increase the efficiency of fertilizer. And one of the ways to do that is to pull some of that out of the mix. So we've got a 10% reduction. And the first thing there, just pulling out that 30 pounds of fertilizer saves you about $10.50 an acre. In this example, again, at that $2.38 per hundred, we're looking at about $6.48 per acre for the Titan. So just pulling out the 10% nets us $4 an acre. Okay, now let's look at the yields. The 270 pounds untreated versus the 300 pounds untreated, there's no difference in yield. That's pretty interesting. We increased the amount of fertilizer to 300 pounds versus 270, but our yields didn't respond to more fertilizer. What's going on there? But look at what happens with both rates of fertilizer, whether it's the reduced rate or the full rate, when we add Titan XC to that. You can see we get about a 6 bushel bump on the 270 pounds, and we get a pretty good bump, about a 13 bushel bump with the 300 pounds. Now that's pretty stout. Now, some guys will argue, well, hey, that's just one trial. Well, there was a second trial in the same location with the exact same parameters, and we saw basically the same pattern in the data. No difference in the yields untreated, but a pretty good bump in both scenarios when we add Titan XC to that. So that's in Kentucky. All right. Let's go over to Illinois. And this trial in Illinois was actually conducted a couple years before they did the trial in Kentucky. And they had 5 fields where they did fall application in a couple and spring applications in a few of those. And the same scenario where they pulled out 10% of the fertilizer and then added Titan to that. And you can see here across these 5 fields, we gained 6.8 bushels per acre, or just over $37 return on that investment. That's pretty significant, guys. And we're looking at, pretty significant commodity prices here. We've adjusted this. We're looking at $750 a ton DAP. We're looking at $650 a ton potash, $550 corn. Guys, these numbers make a whole lot of sense when we talk about increasing efficiency. And again, we're not preaching reducing fertilizer rates. We're just showing how we can increase efficiency by adding technology to our fertilizer. A follow-up to this trial in Illinois, the corn, 5 different fields. They followed 3 of those fields with soybeans the following year without any additional fertilizer, and saw that residual effect of the Titan XC on the fertilizer applied to the corn the previous year. You can see 6.8 bushel increase on the corn the year before. That also translated in a 2.5 bushel increase on the soybeans without doing anything additional. So that's another almost $34 an acre. So pretty good return on investment in the corn, and then residual effect on the soybeans the following year. So that, guys, that's what we're talking about. Increasing efficiency and improving the return on investment, or the ROI. So now let's look at it across a wider range of trials. We've got 92 replicated and side-by-sides here. And of those 92 trials, about a third of these are replicated third-party trials, and about 2/3 of these are side-by-sides in the field. But look at the yield averages across these 92 trials with corn, soybeans, and wheat. We're about 11 bushels with corn, right at 4 bushels with soybeans, and about 3.5 bushels with wheat. So pretty significant results over a pretty long period of time. This is data that we've managed to get in from 2009 up to 2020 last year. So pretty good yield results across a wide range of data, different crops, different regions, different soils, different cultural practices. These results are very consistent. So let's look at that a little bit differently and talk about, again, that return on investment. I've added a few more trials here with rice. I know we have some guys in the South asking about, influences on their rice acres. So we added some rice trials there. 51 corn trials, again, 11 bushel average. For every dollar you spend on this technology, it's going to return $11.70 back. Rice, 8 bushel increase across 4 trials. Every dollar you spend returns almost $7.50. Soybeans, that 3.9 bushels doesn't look like much, but look at the return on investment, almost 10 to 1. Pretty solid. Wheat had 18 trials, about 3.5 bushels. Again, for every dollar we spend, we get over $4 back. That's, again, we talked about efficiency and economics, return on investment. That's one of the themes of this, is to show you how Titan XC can influence the return on investment that you make in your dry fertilizer this season. One more look at it. We always try to, figure out how does this, look from a bushels to pay for it standpoint. So we've got a couple of fertilizer rates in here. 200 pounds per acre spread rate versus 300 pounds per acre spread rate. And if you look at the cost, again, we're assuming $2.38 per 100 pounds. So if you look at that 200 pound spread rate, you only need an additional, 0.87 bushels of corn to pay for that. just over, about 0.7 bushels of wheat and a third of a bushel of beans at a 200-pound spread rate. 300-pound spread rate, you're just over, 1.3 on your corn, 1 bushel of wheat, half bushel of beans. Guys, we saw those numbers on the previous slide across those data points. Average of 11 bushels on the corn, average of 4 bushels on the beans, average of 3.5 bushels on the wheat. More than enough evidence to show that this technology works and can give us a really, really nice return on our investment. All right, so let me get you through some of the misconceptions that may be out there that may pop into your head if you're, looking at putting Titan on your fertilizer. These are some of the most common that we encounter, and I'm going to show you why these things, don't necessarily make sense. Some people are saying, why can't I, why pay for Titan when I can just add more fertilizer? You can always add more fertilizer, and adding more fertilizer can have a positive impact. But is adding more fertilizer going to be the most efficient way to increase your yield? The commodity prices are too low to justify the expense. I think 2021 has proved this one wrong. We're in a fairly good shape on commodity prices right now. We know that's always subject to change, but looking at some of the preliminary reports that are coming out, I'm not sure if we're going to have the bumper crop across all of our geographies this year. So hopefully commodity prices are going to hold. Adding Titan XC is going to slow down the operation. From a grower standpoint, you don't have to do anything. Just tell your fertilizer supplier, Nutrient Ag Solutions, hey, I want Titan on my fertilizer, and that's it. It's going to make my nutrients available too soon. We'll go through that. And is it going to mine my soil nutrients? Hey, we've got that question. That's a valid question. If you do anything to increase nutrient availability and nutrient conversion in the soil, what impact is that going to have on the soil bank of nutrients? That's a valid question. So let's go through a couple of these examples. The first one is, can I add more fertilizer and still be beneficial versus putting Titan on it? So this is a replicated side-by-side from Minnesota that was done several years ago, where the co-op wanted to prove or disprove the effectiveness of Titan XC. So their standard blend is a 50P 60K blend, and at 162 bushels at $5.50, that's gross of $853. That's the net, $853 an acre. They doubled the fertilizer rate, taking into account about 35 cents a pound for the fertilizer. And yes, they increased yield 20 bushels, and they increased the profit to $924 an acre. But look over on the right side of that, where they took their standard blend, the 50-60, added Titan to it, increased yield 19 bushels, but they increased their profit $100 over their standard blend alone. That's what we're talking about, guys. It's not always about adding more fertilizer. It's about getting more efficiency out of the fertilizer that we add. We don't use all of the nutrients that we apply. So we've got to increase the efficiency, uptake, and availability of those to get more out of that system. To give you guys another example, we've got a lab study where we took a 1x rate or standard rate of microessential sulfur zinc, and then we took a 2x rate of that, and then on top of those, that 1x and 2x rate, we added Titan to those, and we looked at those soil nutrients as it related to that fertilizer being applied to those soils in that system. So you can see the untreated soil, the nutrient levels, and we're going to focus on the phosphorus, sulfur, and zinc because of the nature of the fertilizer. And you can see that in the 1x rate versus the 1x rate with Titan XC, you can see a 13% increase in the available phosphorus, a 10% increase in the sulfur, and a 95% increase in the zinc. That's pretty high. It's pretty, maybe that 1x rate was just barely enough to supply the zinc, and the Titan really showed up well. Versus the 2x rate. Now look, even at doubling the fertilizer rate, we still see an 18% increase over that double fertilizer rate when we add the Titan XC in the phosphorus, an 18% increase in the sulfur, and a 24% increase in the zinc. Adding more fertilizer is not always the way to increase your efficiency. There's technology that can do it. So let's get to another example, and this one was related to mining the soil nutrients. So we've got a test that was done over several years in Manlius, Illinois. Up through 2012, there was no Titan XC added. We're looking at the grid samples up through 2012, and where they're adding fertilizer but not putting anything on it. And we're looking at the soil P levels at about 41.5 pounds per acre. They started applying Titan in 2013 to the same fertilizer that was recommended in that field prior to 2013 when we added Titan. And look at when we get to 2017, what's happened. We've tripled those soil available P numbers to 122.5 pounds per acre. Guys, this technology is designed to increase breakdown, availability, uptake. And what we're seeing is that the more nutrients we make available in that system over time, we're adding nutrients to the soil, increasing our nutrient levels, improving our soil health, and making that system more efficient for crop growth and achieving higher yields. So let's try to summarize all of this. So we know that we're trying to achieve higher yields. We're trying to get the most efficiency out of our fertilizer. And we know through the information that we just presented that Titan can actually help play a really key role in getting the most out of our dry fertilizer and influencing some of those other nutrients in that system already. We can expedite the nutrient release to extend that nutrient uptake later into the season. It's not nutrient specific, it's not crop specific. It works in a broad range of crops, soils, environments. If you're applying dry fertilizer, we'd like to see you apply Titan on that. We know through the data that we showed, we get a very consistent return on investment. 11.7 to 1 on corn, almost 10 to 1 on soybeans, and just over 4 to 1 on wheat. Really solid performance across the board on our different crops. You guys can go to cropfertility.com/Titan-XC and really take a closer look at a lot of the investment. Again, you can learn just generally about Titan XC, information to talk about the return on investment, look at the performance, the innovation, and one of the key tabs there is the testimonials, where there's several actual grower testimonials about their experiences with the product on this cropfertility.com/Titan-XC website. So really encourage you guys to take a look at that and get it from a grower's perspective on those testimonials.